Welcome back to another video. For the very first time on this channel, I'm playing Duel Commander on MTGO. That's the second round of the first league I played with Phelia. The first game I lost 1-2 against Atraxa. This is the second round against Slimefoot. First game was quite cool. I kind of forgot about recording. Would have been nice to show you. Were a couple of interesting decisions. But I also did some misclicks. I'm still getting into MTGO, so apologies for that. I hope you won't be tilted on that if you see me misclicking anywhere along the series. But yeah, if you're also looking out to play Duel Commander on MTGO, check out our link in the description. We have a 10% discount on your next Mana Trader subscription. Helps out the channel and helps you getting easier into MTGO. You can also check out our latest introduction to MTGO. I will link that too. Let's get to the matchup. You saw my starting hand. I have a Giver of Runes, White Plume, Spellbook Vendor, Flicker Wisp. I just drew. The Spellbook Vendor is not included in the paper list. This is just a substitution for Astrid Pef, which is not available here on MTGO. So I kind of felt okay with the starting hand. It's not insane because it misses some interaction. But my thought process was, okay, if my opponent plays no Dork turn 1, I can play the Giver, I have protection for Phelia. And then maybe I can slam White Plume on turn 3 and generate some value chains. But then I thought, well, maybe the Flicker Wisp on the theater might be a good thing to deny some mana. Maybe this was a bit of a passive play. Maybe I should have gone for the White Plume. But now that he brings down the Ballmasters, this might have been the correct choice. I have to give protection to not lose my Flicker Wisp. With 5 bodies on board, he would definitely get back the White Plume. And I also have to give protection to Phelia, so it would not die to being blocked by Slimefoot, which means I have the White Plume. Next turn I have an untap trigger, which probably untaps Giver of Runes. But then I have 2 untapped creatures. He has 5. He will definitely get back the initiative. Or gain the initiative for the first time, but then I have a hard time getting it back. I always have to give protection with the Giver. And if he has green creatures and red creatures and black creatures on board, it's rough anyways to hold the initiative. Now he's dealing with Phelia. Yeah, my board is getting worse and worse. A couple of creatures, some pressure. He didn't play a land yet, so I thought I'm not going to block with the Flicker Wisp, because that would probably result in just resetting for 4 mana. He has the time to do that. I do not, so I just take the damage. And here is a Fable. That's a great target for my Witch Enchanter, which was kind of useless so far in hand. I could also double spell with the White Plume and the Spell Vendor, try to build a wall, but I think since he didn't play a land last turn, I might want to deny that Shaman token or deny the treasure token, which I can do by exiling the Marge and also getting rid of the Fable so he can't gain any extra value out of looting. But still being behind. So there are still a couple of creatures on board. The Bowmaster token is not here because I gave protection to Flicker Wisp, so the whole ability fizzled, just in case you're wondering. And yeah, overall I think it's quite a difficult matchup. It's very grindy. you have to have the right cards. Drawing Parallax Wave or finding Parallax Wave definitely helps. For the MTGO session, I felt like, or like in paper, it's much more. In paper, you have the pre-war formalware. That's also a card I'm not playing here. I play Tanglewire because the card is not available on MTGO. So I wanted to test Tanglewire anyways. So far, it was fine. Against control decks, it's pretty good. But yeah, the equipment is absolutely insane. And you really want to have that in that deck. And if you play in paper, playing E-Tutor just to search for the warfare or the Parallax Wave, those are two targets you almost always have a use for. Feels pretty good, to be honest. And I have that here too, to maximize the chances to find a P-Wave in the right situation. Here you see the new Nightmare. Very, very powerful card. At first, when I was reading the card, I thought it would not see that much play, but I definitely underestimated the ability for Slimefoot. Because you're not limited to the 3 energy. You can sometimes, depending on your graveyard, you can just reanimate a dork, then you're left with 2 energy, bounce it back, play it again, and then you have 5 energy, and then you can maybe reanimate a Fury or a Chaos Defiler or something like this. So that's quite a good card. And at that board state, it looks very, very ugly for me. I drew another land. Maybe the correct play would have been, so now I decide to double spell. Maybe the correct play would have been to go for Phelia and then cast a Spellbook Vendor to gain some additional value next turn, because my opponent has 1 card in hand. But yeah. You can go for combat, you can create a roll token, but you don't have to attack. And I'm not quite sure. Yeah, I think I just kind of, now I can pay for it. Was a bit hesitating with the trigger. I chose the Flicker Whiz for power. You can go in. I can fly over. I see the Razor Grass ambush, and at that point I thought, okay, maybe it's nice to have something against his Slimefoot. Maybe I just keep it on top. But in fact, you should have just put it down because it's not good enough. My thought was, okay, I have the Flicker Wisp. I can untap it next turn with the White Plume. That's exactly what I do. He has 6 creatures, so he would have to go in with everything. But then I think he has an Eldritch. Yeah, it was an Eldritch. An Eldritch can find Chaos Defiler now or a Fury. And yeah, a Fury wouldn't be that good with the Giver of Runes on board, but the Chaos Defiler circumvents Giver. So he can get rid of the White Plume Adventurer and then swing in. I was kind of messing up because I thought, okay, well, it's not a target. We all know that. So it definitely was not needed to give protection here. That's also sometimes I'm kind of confused still with the triggers, like, because you can just lower the box, right? And sometimes the trigger is that big that the window is above the card that it triggers. So sometimes I'm a bit confused as to whether it's targeting the right permanent. But we will get there. So Chaos Defiler in graveyard. He got rid of Flicker Wisp and White Plume. Yeah, and at that point, it's like, okay, you get back initiative. I have 2 lands and I know my other card on top, so I will just concede and we go over to the next game. This hand looks okay, but it's not enough, I think. So this one is much better. I have Blade Splicer, which allows me to have 7 power on turn 3 if I get to resolve Phelia and it stays on board. But again, I have the Giver. I even have double protection with the Reverent Mantra. Wandering Emperor is also a very good interaction with Phelia, because end of turn you can activate any ability again. So pretty basic here. We just have to draw a 3rd land, but I have 2 draws. I'm confident that I will get there. My opponent has no Dork and no interaction for the Giver, and I draw my 3rd land. I just pass the turn, and then I can play Phelia end of turn. And I think they also, to be fair, they had a mulligan down to 5, so that's quite rough. Or even, no, even down to 4, I think. So that's a bit of a non-game. But sometimes you have a couple of hands that just don't line up at all. So we go ahead and cast Phelia. And now I can go for the desired line with the Blade Splicer. He cannot block with the Dowdy, so I don't even have to activate the Giver. Going for combat. And yeah, since there is no spell-based board wipe in Slimefoot decks, it's pretty hard for him to deal with that much power already. Also because he's down to 4 cards. Dowdy can't block, so he has to go on the offense with it. Next turn will be a swing for potentially 10 damage. Maybe I will, depending on what's the next land draw, I will either flicker the Blade Splicer again, make another Golem, or I can also keep up the Emperor and maybe exile the Dowdy, flicker it, go for another Samurai or something like this. Yeah, the best play he can bring up is Slimefoot. Some blockers on board. So now I cannot flicker the Blade Splicer, otherwise the Golems would lose first strike. But I drew Ossification, which is even better, so I can just... No, I cannot play it actually, because I have no basic land to target. Yeah, so... But I can still go for combat and flicker the Inspector. Can crack the clue. Maybe I can find a land drop here. And then I can go for combat. If he decides to block, I can just give protection by, for example, by exiling the invasion. Because Ossification and Wandering Emperor already sealed the deal almost. So he's going for Phelia. I can give protection with Giver first. And next turn, if he decides to interact with it somehow, then I can try to cast a Reverent Mantra. So Novice Inspector comes back, bringing down another clue token. And it's pretty rough already, I think. My opponent has a Saproling to get back Slimefoot from the graveyard. There could also be the Nightmare, for example, to get it back, an Unearth, something like this. So again, Dowdy attacking, he cannot block anyways. And as long as he has no Thoughtseize and alike, he can't use it for anything further. And he decides to just scoop the game. Game 3. On the draw, I think this hand is okay. It's not insane, but I have the Bodyguard again, gives some protection. The Soulgate Lantern is quite good, so he can't make use of his graveyard. Also, I can flicker the Lantern to repeatedly exile one card, get rid of the creature cards, and thereby keep his reanimation spells in check, and also Slimefoot's ability. Ephemerate might be useful in the later game, and E-Tutor is definitely rooting for the Parallax Wave, which will probably win me the game here. So I even have a portable hole against any 1 or 2 drop. That's pretty good. So just going for my Bodyguard. And I'm not sure about his turn 2 play. It's a Nightmare again. Okay. That's not too scary. Gives me more time. He has nothing in his graveyard so far. So if that's his best turn 2 play, I think he has a mulligan on 6 again. Yeah, we have to check. You have to check earlier in this video. I'm not quite sure, but he's definitely not on 7. So I just attack. And he will most likely cast Slimefoot now. And I will bring down Phelia. So there we go. The fungus is joining the party. The good dog joining the field. And now there's a judgment from top. That's not too bad. We take it. So I can cast a judgment, get rid of Slimefoot. Still, I don't have to take care of the Nightmare. And then I can either attack and flicker the Bodyguard, which I don't do. I rather attack, get rid of the token, and deal 3 damage. Because I want to close the game as fast as possible. If he starts to find a way to grind out of that game, it will be pretty hard for me, and I really want to deny him from getting there. So Slimefoot is text. Next cast will cost 5 mana in total. Ephemerate is not looking too powerful with the current board state, but in worst case, it will protect Phelia from any interaction if the Bodyguard is already gone. So he just plays a land and nothing else, and he even shocks. There is a Witch Enchanter, which is an okay play right now. I mean, getting rid of the Nightmare. I could also always portable hold a Nightmare, but I rather like to keep that for a more relevant card. Yeah, I just have a curve here. I have protection for my dog. Still, I don't have to play the Lantern. You want to delay your information about Graveyard Hate as much as possible to let them play into certain patterns. Because maybe he thinks of a line that he can get some creatures into the graveyard and then get them back later, and then you surprise them. It would probably change their whole thought process on whether or not hitting the graveyard with some creatures if the Graveyard Hate is already on board. So you always want to try to bait your opponent in that direction. But now that the Nightmare is gone, it's not relevant anyways. So yeah, he tried to abrupt decay my dog. Bodyguard is gone. I'm left with 5 power on board, 2 creatures. And he's back on 5 lands. And there's a Chaos Defiler, which is quite a good top deck. Maybe he had it in hand for a couple of turns. And he decides to get rid of Phelia, which is kind of wrong. I mean, I get the idea of getting rid of her and denying all the other additional ETBs, but here I have a very, very nice line. So I can ephemerate the Enchanter, destroying Chaos Defiler, because it's an artifact creature. And then he has to choose the Enchanter as a target for the trigger. And then I can bring down the White Plume. And with the Plains Eye Surge that I can play, I can E-tutor end of turn to find a Parallax Wave and just bring home the game. And I even have an Ephemerate rebounded, so I can think about flickering the White Plume next turn. Maybe if he manages to get it back. Oh, actually, I'm not even playing the E-tutor. I play the Soulgate Lantern just to be safe against any reanimation on the Chaos Defiler. And if he has a couple of creatures now, I can still E-tutor in my upkeep, find a Parallax Wave, and then I would rather go for the counters on White Plume and not flicker it again, and then just try to beat him down, because then he will get 5 damage, and the next turn he would gain another 5 damage from the trap, or losing 5 life from the 3rd step in the dungeon. And there's a Slimefoot expected, 2 cards left in hand. Since his only red mana source is the Kaplusian Forest, he even has to ping himself. So that's a 2-turn clock here. I don't want to cast my Ephemerate, but I will cast the Enlightened Tutor, search for the Parallax Wave, put the counters on White Plume, and at that point I think he realized, well, this game is pretty much over. So yeah, I think it was a cool showing for Phelia. The Slimefoot player was a bit unlucky in that regard, but yes, I hope you enjoyed the video. And I will definitely show another match of this league, and in the future I will also have more games recorded, I guess. With that being said, thanks for tuning in, and see you next time.